External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar, who's currently holding a key bilateral meet with his Russian counterpart in Moscow. Now remember, this is a very, very important visit of the External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar, who is in Moscow, a two-day visit to Russia. He is holding talks with the Russian foreign minister in continuation with the regular high-level dialogue between the two sides. Let me go across to Srinjoy joining us with more details. Srinjoy, all eyes really on this meet between External Affairs Minister and his Russian counterpart, and much speculation given the war in Ukraine.
Yes, he's definitely meeting Sergey Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, and after that he will meet Denis Manturov, the deputy prime minister of Russia. There are two really aspects here. One is the strategic aspect. There, yes, you're right, Ukraine will certainly come up during the discussions, as also counter-terrorism, because India and Russia will work together just as India becomes president of the UN Security Council on counter-terrorism. So that issue will also come up, and therefore AFPAK, the situation in Pakistan, cross-border terrorism, and the deteriorating situation in Afghanistan will certainly come up. China will also come up, as will other things like Iran and Syria. Those are really Russian issues that will come up. As far as economic issues are concerned, the import of petroleum from Russia, the import of fertilizers from Russia, and also Russia has proposed to India that the two countries work together to search for oil in the Arctic regions. Now, that is a new development, and it is likely to be announced after the Manturov meeting. So it's a lot happening in Moscow, because Jaishankar has two meetings. The Russians are also likely to ask Jaishankar if Prime Minister Narendra Modi could get to Russia, to Moscow for a bilateral in the near future. Whether it's going to be possible or not, we have to see. There is also a possibility of Prime Minister Modi and President Putin meeting on the sidelines of the Bali summit, G20 summit later this month. So clearly, India is going to tell Russia about Ukraine. India is making 2 points. One, stop the war, and have diplomatic dialogue. Let's see what happens at the end of it.
Okay, so the ministers in all likelihood to discuss India's presidency in the SCO, efforts to fight terrorism and so on and so forth, several regional issues that will also be put on the table. As the two leaders are currently in conversation, let me go across to Major General G.D. Bakshi also with us. Major General G.D. Bakshi, much is also being spoken of the possible discussions that could take place with regards to the war in Ukraine. Now, since the start of the Ukraine conflict earlier this year, India's bilateral ties with Russia have also come under the scanner a tad bit, given the surge in oil imports from sanctions hit Moscow. So that's also a concern that India is closely looking at.
No, the fact of the matter is India is giving primacy to its own national interest. We are not here to, keep sucking up to the United States and NATO and doing their bidding. All the EU countries are continually buying Russian gas and oil, and yet they were telling us to, on moral grounds, stop the import of Russian oil and gas. So, I mean, these hypocritical attitudes will not wash. And the fact is, India will have to give primacy to its own national interest. Previously, in the UPA regime, when we were told to impose sanctions on Iran and join in and stop buying oil, the cheapest oil we were getting was from Iran, because geographically it is the closest. And that the Iranian crude suits our refinery. But the simple fact is that we gave up that, we followed the bidding of the United States, and in the bargain we almost lost the Chabahar port contract. They were helping us in Afghanistan against the then very revanchist Taliban. All that we lost, we gave up, we sacrificed our national interest to appease some other powers. So
and that's been one big learning as well from the war in Ukraine, isn't it, General G.D. Bakshi, on how every nation must fend for itself, fight for itself, and should be absolutely self-reliable. Thank you for speaking to us. Let me go across to RSN Singh also.